Okay, we have Niara on the other side of Skype. Hi, Niara.
Hello.
Okay, thank you for the interview, Niara. This is卓飛from MJ13. Welcome to the show. And you were a radar operator in U.S. Military Air Force 25 years ago. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. In 1980.
Okay. What exactly did you see on the radar screen? Anything unusual or anything unexplained?
Well, not usually, but years after I got out of the Air Force, I discovered missing time. And it was quite a chunk of missing time. It was about 3.5, maybe 4 months. And I had to look into that.
How do you find out?
Well, I had a friend who we got to be good friends and talked about all kinds of things about spirituality and UFOs and all kinds of things. And he noticed that if I talked about my time in the military, I kind of avoided the subject. And he thought that was odd because I was so open talking about everything else. So he sat me down one afternoon and he said, I want you to tell me about your military time from start to finish. And I said, okay, no problem. So I said I went into Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, in San Antonio, Texas. I went to boot camp for 6 weeks. I went to technical training school at Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi. And then my first duty station was Nellis Air Force Base, and I worked on a Tonopah electronic warfare range. And then I stopped talking and I just stared at him because I couldn't remember anything about working at Tonopah. I could only tell you that I worked there. I couldn't remember anything about the work area, about travel to and from work. I couldn't remember the people I worked with. I couldn't even remember the name of the motel that I stayed at in Tonopah every other week. And with the realization of this came a wave of nausea.
Right.
You know, I didn't actually get sick, but I did feel nauseated. And with the things that I've been into my whole life with spirituality and alternative healing, I know that a wave of nausea is kind of what's considered a body flag of something wrong. And so I really wanted to find out more about what happened.
When did you join the military?
I joined in April of 1979. And again, went through boot camp and technical training school. Then I went home for the holidays, Christmas holiday. And then right after the Christmas holiday, I traveled out to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. And that's when I had my first, actual duty station as a radar operator.
Then when did you talk to your friend?
This was years later. This was, I believe, 1992.
1992. So you left the military already?
Okay, I left the military in 1983. I was only in for 4 years, which is a regular term of enlistment.
All right. Okay, so after 4 years, you service in military, and then one day in 1992, you talk to your friend, and you realize you got 3 months to 4 months, which is missing, but you don't know anything about it.
No, I just didn't think about the military time. For some reason, I just was focused on my life and being a mother to my children, and I was married at the time when I got out. And, my life was taken up with other things, and I just didn't think back about Tonopah until my friend asked me about it, and it was very troubling to find that I couldn't remember anything about Tonopah. I had to work very hard to get back even little bits of memory. And the way that I did it, and I'm writing about this in my book, about what memory really is comprised of. So basically what I did was I remembered technical training school, and I remembered friends that I knew in technical training school who I also knew were at Tonopah. And I tried to use the memories of the friendship to kind of pave a trail into that missing time area. And I did manage to retrieve little bits of things, but nothing important. Mostly off-duty recreational activities.
Okay.
And then I did the same thing, afterwards. I thought about people I knew at my next duty station that were at Tonopah and tried to track that back into that time. But it was very difficult to try to get to anything.
Okay. Right. Well, I just want to know more information so the audience can know you better. Before you leave the military, your actual work is staring at the radar most of the time. Did you see anything unusual?
I only saw the unusual things when I had the hypnosis session.
Oh, right.
And I should probably mention that the kind of radar that I worked on. There's the big air traffic control radar that sweeps the whole sky. And the kind of radar I worked on was a specialized military radar. It was a surface-to-air missile or anti-aircraft artillery radar. So the big radar that sweeps the sky would call out to our little radar sites and tell us where the aircraft were in the sky. And then we would point our radar in that part of the sky and try to pick up a lock on that aircraft.
Right.
And what we were doing on the Nevada desert was training pilots to fly against radar to increase their survivability.
So your actual work on the station was to train the pilots, not actually get into the war or something.
Right. It's a training exercise, and they actually made a movie about it from the pilot's point of view, and the name of the movie is called Red Flag.
All
and
right.
It stars William Devane.
All right. Okay. 4 months, which is missing. That is a long time. Incredible. I mean, unbelievable. What did you do next?
Well, we had a whole life expo come to Las Vegas, Nevada, which was where I was living at the time. And one of the speakers there happened to be Bud Hopkins. And I went to his presentation, and he was talking about abductees.
Right.
And at the end of his lecture, he asked for questions, and I raised my hand, and I said, well, I have this strange nightmare from when I was a child, and then I have this other strange experience, and then I have 3 months, three or more months of missing time from my time in the military. And about that time, he said, talk to me afterwards. Right. And so I did. And he agreed to do a hypnosis session with me that evening. And that's when the memories began to reemerge.
Right. I haven't really tried the hypnosis before, but what did you see during the process? Did you see anything, like any creatures, any grays or anything?
No, I didn't see any grays, at least not right away. Basically, he asked me, he said it's January 1980. And go to some place that's significant for you in January of 1980. And immediately I said, well, I'm standing on the deck of the radar van, and it's nighttime. And I'm not almost ever out here. I'm never out here at nighttime, but it's nighttime now. And we're standing on the deck of the radar van. I'm looking in the sky, and I'm seeing UFOs, or what I should say, alien spacecraft up there. And these were not far away, little lights that are nice to look at in a lot of UFO pictures. One of the UFOs was so close that I could see it in very clear detail. And I can describe it. It was glowing orange on the bottom, and the bottom of it looked like what I would term a metal skin.
Metal skin.
And a metal skin, and underneath the skin you could see that orange glow, like the metal was translucent.
Right.
And there seemed to be lights lighting up in sequence around the bottom that made it look like it might have been spinning on the bottom, but it wasn't really spinning. It was just lights lighting up in sequence. And there was a center, a round section of it in the center of the bottom. And it really wasn't very far away from me. It was maybe 100, 200 yards.
Right.
And up in the sky, and it was low. And I was very afraid of what I was seeing because I only had a secret security clearance. Right. I did not have a top secret clearance. And I was really scared. I thought, man, whatever this is, it is classified so high that I can't believe that I'm seeing this at my security clearance level, and I was really scared. In addition, we were forbidden very sternly not to speak to each other beyond what was necessary to run the radar test. And what we were doing was we had just come out of the van testing the radar to see if it would track these craft, and of course it was ridiculous.
Right.
The radar could not track those craft, and they could basically appear in one part of the sky, and then suddenly they'd be gone, and they'd reappear someplace else. There was no way that this radar, with its clunky servos, could whip around that fast to follow them. There was no way to track them.
I see. So did you see any creatures? I mean, during this hypnotized process?
Not in the military time in this particular session. In my later sessions with Gloria Hawker, and it took, from 1994 to 2003 for me to heal enough and find someone I trusted enough to even have hypnosis again. But I did see creatures, or I should say ET, associated with the military in the session with Gloria Hawker in 2003. And the only other thing that I can say about seeing extraterrestrials was when Bud finished, or actually he started with, it's hard because the tape is so messy I can't really listen to it. But he did take me back to the nightmare I had when I was 4 years old.
Right.
And I woke up screaming from that nightmare, and he took me back to that nightmare, and we looked at it, and it was a contact experience.
Right.
And I was picked up as a small child, and a lot of things were done, and I have been an experiencer of extraterrestrial phenomenon since childhood.
Right.
And I believe, and Melinda Leslie is a brilliant researcher. She's done so much work on this subject, and she really has drawn many correlations between people who are ET experiencers in their lives, and then the interest that the military or covert ops people have in them because they are experiencers.
So, information from your memories, you remember you see ETs. Any species? Do you remember what kind of species of alien you saw?
Yeah, as a child, I saw grays. I call them zetas, zeta reticulans, so I just call them zetas.
Right.
And then in the session about the military experiences with Gloria Hawker in 2003, I did see a gray who was sitting with 8 people. I feel like I'm kind of coming in the middle of the story here a little bit, but I did see a gray at that time who was sitting with several human beings.
Right.
And during my experiences. And then I also did see a reptilian.
Oh, okay. You saw the reptilian as well. In the same case or different cases?
Yeah, it was different. I didn't really see the reptilians with the grays. I saw a reptilian in a room in an underground facility.
Right.
And all I was doing really was passing the room on my way to someplace else, but I remember looking in the room and seeing this reptilian, and it was a very frightening thing to look at. And then there was also a reptilian on the craft that took me to the moon.
Took you to the moon?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about that? I mean, are you saying there is alien base on the moon?
Well, I think there are human bases and alien bases on the moon. I think there are both. This was, this was from the hypnosis session with Gloria Hawker.
Right.
And she asked me if I had ever been off the planet. And that's when I got this very heavy feeling in my body, and the images started to come of, I was taken to a hangar where there was a craft.
Right.
And I was given these clothes to wear, and they were kind of silver clothes. It was some kind of spacesuit, but it wasn't like the big clunky spacesuits that they give astronauts. Right. This was a a lot more sleek, let's say. And and when I put it on, it kind of formed itself to my body. And when I put the boots on, the boots kind of suctioned themselves on and made an airtight seal. And there were gloves that did the same thing.
Right.
And so I put this on. I didn't have a helmet on, but I put this suit on, and I was told to get onto the spacecraft, the flying saucer, and there was a ladder underneath it, going up into it, and I climbed up there, and I was told to lay on the floor, kind of like cargo.
Right.
And I was there with a couple other people that were laying on the floor as well, and they were men, not women. I was the only woman there.
You're the only woman
and
there.
I was the only woman in that case.
Right.
And then some people got on and took the chairs. You know, there were some chairs in the craft, and I assumed they must be important people because they got a chair. So
Right.
I saw the reptilian. There was like a beam in the very center of the saucer.
Right.
And the reptilian was behind the beam, and he stepped out from behind it for a minute, and I saw him, and it was really, again, very frightening to look at this creature.
Right.
And then he moved back behind the beam, and I didn't see him anymore. And then the craft took off, and we traveled to the moon, and it didn't take nearly as long to get to the moon as you would think it would, you know, not like the Apollo missions.
You have any idea how long it takes?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I would just hazard a guess that maybe it was 30 minutes.
Wow, that's
20 or 30 minutes.
Okay, the whole process. I know the whole process you recorded from Hypnotize, including what you just mentioned, that you were ordered to get on the craft and lay on the floor and with people with the chairs and the reptilians and all that. Did you see this in a clear mind, or you were being drugged?
No, I wasn't drugged. It was the light inside the craft was low, so it wasn't real bright in there. And I was, you know, again, I was scared. A lot of the time, the time I was scared, I was also angry at the same time. So it's kind of like, okay, scared and angry a lot, almost all the time.
So, yeah.
And it's hard to say. I mean, you're in a situation like that and you think, gosh, the wonder of it all. You know, you're seeing these things that nobody else sees and so on and so forth. But the actuality of the experience,
right,
when you're under that kind of fear,
right,
when you're afraid, you tend to kind of pull into yourself.
Yeah, this is awful. I can imagine that. Okay, what I want to ask you is, do you believe in UFOs and aliens at that time, when the time you're being abducted? I mean, the reason I'm asking is because for a lot of people who don't believe, they will think this kind of thing is crazy. But if they saw it themselves, they saw the real alien, they saw the real craft right in front of them, and they think they were even more crazy, and they will block the memories from that. So what I want to know is, do you believe in that already when you saw them?
Well, a little bit.
A little bit.
It's interesting to say. At that time that I had the experiences in the military, I was a little bit into UFOs. And partly that was my dad's fault, because when I was 16, he gave me Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods to read, all 3 of his Chariots of the Gods books.
Right.
And he said, "You got to read these."
That could be my dad. That could be my dad's fault as well.
Yes, so I did read those, and it did pique my interest in the subject, and I have always been fascinated with science fiction, and always fascinated with travel to other worlds. I collected, when I was a kid, I collected all kinds of material on Mars.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, I was very interested. And I drew pictures also. This is interesting. I drew pictures when I was a kid about spacecraft.
Right.
And I drew a picture of a huge spherical craft that was like a small country inside that craft. I mean, it housed, maybe thousands or millions of individuals.
Right.
And then around the edge, around the circumference, there were openings where scout craft would come in and go out. And I drew this when I was a teenager.
All right, let's get back to the case. So people who sit on the chair, you think they're human?
Yes.
I mean, and inside the craft, the people who sit in the craft, do you think they're important people?
Yes.
Well, obviously they won't tell you that we are on the way to the moon. Welcome aboard. So, when you arrived, what did you see?
Well, we got off at a base, so there was activity there, and buildings and people. It was very much like a base in the desert.
Right.
And to be honest, I don't recall too much of it because it was a real heavy experience being there. It was not a fun experience at all. A lot of bad things happened to me there. And so it's really difficult to even think about it. And I'm not sure, what to tell you other than they tried to find work for me to do that was similar to my electronics work. So I operated some machinery, and I wasn't allowed to sleep very much, and I was not also allowed to have very good food. I got water and a little bread and something that I can only call gruel, some kind of nasty soup. And so I was worked pretty much for the full week, and then not allowed to sleep at night, and there was more sexual assault that happened
that's awful.
during the night. Yeah.
Oh, that's awful. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that's important about the moon experience is that people say, well, why didn't somebody miss her when she was back on the planet? Well, my work at Tonopah was to travel up to the Tonopah Electronic Warfare Range in Tonopah, the city of Tonopah, to stay at a week at a time. So we would be up at Tonopah for a week, and then we would be on the bus and go back to Las Vegas and work in Las Vegas at Nellis Air Force Base for a week.
Right.
So it was a week up on the range and a week down on the range.
Right.
So the week that I was at the moon, the people on the range were told I got sick and was sent back to Las Vegas. Right. And then the people in Las Vegas thought, oh, she's just doing her regular shift up at the range.
Right.
So nobody missed me for the whole week.
But didn't any one of your friends or your family trying to find you? You've been disappeared for the whole week.
No, my family thought that I was up working at the range for the week on my usual range rotation. Right.
And they have no idea you went to the moon and go through such a terrible experience.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry to hear about your story. I mean, it's awful, but anyway, so one day suddenly they said you're not going back to the Earth. Is that right?
I was only there for a week. I wasn't there for a long time.
Oh, you're only there for a week?
Only a week, because that's how our schedule was. It was a week up at the electronic warfare range where I worked on the radar, and then it was a week back in Nellis Air Force Base. So a week up and a week back, and a week up and a week back.
All right. You're not staying at the moon once, but
I think only once.
Only once. Okay, I see. So after you,
it could have been more. It could have been more times. I would have to have more hypnosis to examine that time further.
Yeah, of course. You don't want to go through that again, because that's a terrible experience. Is it right?
I'm not anxious to do it.
Yeah, I can understand. Well, so that is my lab. Is that right?
Yeah, it's my lab. The thing that about my labs is a lot of the people that have my lab experiences are not in the military. I was in the military, so
So
it's a similar experience, but I was military personnel myself.
Right.
And I think the important thing to look at with this moon experience is all the correlating information. I mean, Jose Escamilla has put out a movie now, a film called Moon Rising, where he shows all these different things that have been airbrushed out of the moon. There is a Sergeant Wolf who was in the Disclosure Project witness testimony video,
right,
who saw photographs of buildings on the moon. So it's not only me coming out with this incredible, unbelievable story. There are intersecting pieces of information from a lot of other sectors.
Right. Okay, one more questions before the break time. Can you tell me, when you land on the moon and the environment of the base, what is that looks like? Is that a high-tech base or like a normal military base?
It seemed like kind of a combination of some very high technological aspects, and then the same old kinds of ugly buildings that they put on bases on Earth. So it seemed like a combination of the two.
Right. Okay.
And it seems to me that I remember a dome over part of the facility so that people could walk around without breathing equipment.
Right, I see. Thanks, Niara. Thanks for sharing. Okay, we'll go for a break right now, and we come back with more information with Niara Isley and MJ13. Okay, we're back. You're listening to MJ13. This is Chuck Fay here with Niara Isley on the other side of Skype. And of course, in the studio, we have Mr. Nail Glue is still here. He's lying like sleeping. Like sleeping.
Very tired, Chuck Fay. Very tired.
Okay, let's forget about him right now. So, before the break time, we have shared with Niara how you get back all this memory from the missing time. Is that the only missing time section you have?
That's the only real missing time that I recall, yeah.
But that is the only abduction experience you have?
Well, I've been an abductee, or I should say an experiencer. I like experiencer better. From childhood through young adulthood and middle adulthood, I had a lot of experiences with the ETs. There were, do you want to go into the ET experiences now, or do you want to finish up with the military? Which would you rather prefer?
Yeah, you can, we can go ahead with the alien abduction first.
Okay. Well, they picked me up. The first memory that I had from the session with Bud Hopkins was being taken. I had a dream of my sister and two friends that I couldn't see who they were. And my sister and two friends, they took me out in the middle of the night, and they left me under a street lamp. And they said, stay in the light of the street lamp until we come back and get you. And I stayed there, and I was alone for a long time. And finally, I got so scared that I started screaming, and I woke up in my bed screaming. So that was the dream.
Yeah, but you thought that was a normal bad dream.
Yeah, it was a bad. I thought it was a bad dream, but it's unusual for me to wake up screaming. I've never really woke up screaming before or since.
Right.
So it was pretty intense. So when we looked at that experience under hypnosis, it was ETs that came. My bedroom, I woke up and the bedroom was full of light. The ETs took me up out of my bed with some kind of, they levitated me up out of the bed through the ceiling into a craft. And while I was there, they examined me on a table, and they did something to me that after I came out of hypnosis, I thought it reminded me of an ultrasound. And they took this piece of equipment and they put it over the abdomen and kind of looked all around the abdomen with this thing. When I was under hypnosis, I didn't know what to call it, so I called it a stomach presser. But they were pressing pretty hard on the abdomen with this thing. And then when I came out of hypnosis, I thought, man, that reminds me of an ultrasound.
Right.
And so they seemed to be looking inside the abdominal area for some reason, for some purpose, I don't know. But I'm guessing from the other memories that I retrieved with Gloria Hawker that they were examining me at that point to see if I had the right kind of, if I was constructed the right way, or the way that they needed me to be constructed in my reproductive area, to see if I was suitable for some of their hybridization projects. And because that was the recurring theme throughout my young adulthood, was pregnancies that it seemed like, according to the doctor, I didn't go to doctors and get pregnancy tests and everything else like that. I was kind of a different sort of a woman that didn't want much to do with doctors. And I didn't really have missed periods or missed menstrual cycles. What I did have, though, was very tiny menstrual cycles for many years.
Tiny what?
Very, very, very tiny, very small amount of menstrual cycle.
All right, okay.
Okay. And then every time I was around a doctor for an examination, they would say, are you pregnant? And I say, no, I'm not pregnant. I can't be pregnant because of whatever. And then finally, they asked so many times over the years when I was around a doctor, they would ask if I was pregnant, and to me, there was no way I could be pregnant. And finally, I said, why do you think I'm pregnant? You doctors ask me if I'm pregnant. It seems like every time I come in for a pelvic exam.
Right.
And they said, and the one doctor I said, well, your uterus is enlarged. So it's like, okay, fine. And it was kind of frustrating. And then at age 35, I had a tubal ligation so that I would not get pregnant anymore, and I didn't have to take the birth control pill anymore. And when the doctor went in to do the tubal ligation, he opened me up, and I was under local anesthetic, which means I was awake for the procedure. And he opened me up and went in there, and he says, my God, you're full of adhesions in here. Have you had any other procedures? And I said, no, I haven't had any other procedures. And he said, well, your whole abdominal cavity is full of adhesions. And he sounded really concerned. And so I felt concerned about it, but I didn't know what to think or what to make of it. And then in 2003, years later, in 2003, when I had the hypnosis with Gloria Hawker, we found out they were harvesting fetuses by going in the belly button with a needle. And they would probe around in there with that needle and take the fetus out of the uterus and kind of harvest it out of the uterus. And they did this, many times.
Yeah, but this is all done during the abduction period.
Yeah.
So you're not only having the alien abduction as a child, you have that even when you were adults, even when you joined the military.
Yeah, I'm sure it was ongoing the whole time.
But at the same time, you got the My Lab at the same time. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, at least while I was in the military, I had those experiences. And I don't know if I've had any MILAB experiences since I left the military. Again, I would have to have more hypnosis to explore that, if that's a possibility.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I suddenly have questions I want to ask. That you mentioned that you when you fly to the moon and you lay on the floor to craft, you see people next to you. Do you know these people? I mean, are they working in the military?
Under hypnosis, I seem to recognize one of the men.
Oh, he works in the military as well.
Yeah, he was in the military, and he was attached to the radar unit that I was attached to. But that's really all I'm going to say, because if he is having his own issues, and he may or may not have recalled his memories, And I can't really speak about him too much more than what I've said, because it's really up to him.
Right.
If he comes to a place where he remembers something or wants to explore it, that's up to him.
Right. So you didn't really talk to him after this?
No.
Okay. Okay, let's go back to the case. Can you tell the difference between the alien abduction and the MyLab? Is that right?
Yeah, I can tell the difference from what it is for me. I tend to be a little psychic.
Right.
And maybe that's a gift from my contact with the ETs. It's possible. Many people come back with greater intuitive gifts
Right.
from their contact with ETs.
Right.
But when I was with the ETs, they were almost completely devoid of emotion. And I never picked up anything from them other than a scientific curiosity about what they were doing to me.
Right.
I never got the impression that they were inflicting any harm or pain or misery on me with an intention to harm.
Right.
Any discomfort I felt, any fear that I felt was just incidental to the process of their examination.
Right.
It wasn't intended to be harmful. And there was so much emotional flatness to them that there wasn't really anything to. I mean, I was angry when I was a little kid, but as things progressed and I grew older and this continued to be part of my nocturnal life, I got over being angry with them.
Right.
They were just like a force of nature, you know, and they didn't really mean to cause harm, so far as I could tell. Now, the military experiences was very, very different. These people intended to harm. These people intended to inflict terror.
Right.
One of the things that I had to study to try to understand what happened to me is trauma-based mind control. When you inflict enough trauma on someone, you can get them to compartmentalize, to splinter off a piece of their memory and bury it in the subconscious.
Right.
And so they inflict that trauma intentionally, with an intent to harm, with an intent to terrorize. And there was one blonde security guard who I had a lot of interaction with. Right. And I think he must have been a sociopath, because he really enjoyed inflicting pain and misery. And he was very snide about it. He was very smug about it. He would gloat the fact that I couldn't do anything to help myself and that he could do whatever he wanted. He was really a pretty ugly person. And so there's a night and day contrast between what I experienced with the ETs and what I experienced with other human beings.
Okay, I see. Obviously, you can tell the difference depends on the feeling. Did they actually talk to you when they asked you to work? I mean, the human beings, when they order you to do some work here, do some work there, did they actually talk to you?
Yeah, they would talk to me to order me to do things. They didn't talk to me too much beyond that, other than say, go here, do this, go there, do that. And, mostly it was just orders.
But what about the alien, the reptilians? Did they have any interactive with you?
No, I didn't have much interaction with them.
Right, okay.
At least not to my knowledge.
Right, you stayed there for a week, and before they released you back to the Earth, did they do anything? Did they say anything? Like did they threaten you not to tell this to anybody? Did they do anything, any process to erase your memory?
Yeah, well, yeah, there are things. Since I had the hypnosis, I have had flashbacks.
Right.
Let me tell you about the time when I saw the craft out on the Nevada test site at night. After we saw the craft and after we were done at the radar site, they took us to what I think was Area 51. I'm not positive it was Area 51. I just couldn't imagine any place out in the middle of the desert like that had so much at it that wouldn't be Area 51. So I don't know for sure if it was Area 51. It could have been. They took us there in a bus that had painted over windows. And it was an old, like, school bus, painted Air Force Navy blue with painted over windows. When we got off the bus in Area 51, we were taken into a medical facility. We were sat down in a waiting room. The lights were off in the waiting room, so it was dark. The only light coming in was from a hallway behind where we were sitting. One by one, they called our names to go into a little room adjacent to the waiting room. When it was my turn to go in there, I had to lay down on a stainless steel examining table with all my fatigues on, and an armed security guard was in the room with me. I waited there for a while, very, very scared. Then a guy came in the door in a white lab coat and said, "Stay calm," 3 times, in kind of a monotone voice. And he came up beside the right side of my head, and he injected me in the right side of the neck with a hypodermic needle of some unknown stuff. I don't know what was in that needle. And then I remembered this in the situation with Bud Hopkins. And then in 2003, I looked at this again because I wanted to know what happened after the injection. So in 2003, when I had the hypnosis session with Gloria Hawker, I found that after the injection, 2 security guards physically picked me up on either arm off the table and took me out a different doorway. In that doorway was a staircase that went very far down. It was like a nightmarish long staircase. At the bottom of the staircase, I was thrown in a little room, and the door was locked after me while I went through the effects of that injection. And it was a very bad experience going through the effects of that injection. About all I could do was curl up on the floor and scream. So that's trauma. You get injected by something, you don't know what it is, and then it does that kind of stuff to you. That's trauma. So I was finally getting over the trauma of the shot when the 2 security guards, one of which was the blonde one that I talked about a minute ago, and they drugged me out of the room, and I was raped, and I was sexually assaulted in front of 8 people. 8 people watched, and one of those people was a gray alien. And so I was raped by one security guard and then the other one. And so this kind of trauma, when I first had the memories, I thought, what on earth is going on here? You know, why would they do such horrible things to someone? And then I had to study about trauma and trauma-based mind control. So just to try to understand the context in which this kind of treatment would even occur, because it's really horrible.
It is.
And, you know, it's the kind of thing that would happen at Abu Ghraib or, you know, Guantanamo Bay. It was really awful. So I had to study a little bit about mind control and Project Paperclip and a whole bunch of other things that gave me information to understand why they would traumatize someone so badly. And the trauma itself is designed to get you to fragment your memory and bury certain parts of it away. And when the trauma is too severe, then the mind takes it and puts it in the subconscious so that you can go on functioning in your life without being rattled by trauma constantly. So then after I had hypnosis, I had other flashbacks. In the flashbacks, I remember being in an interrogation style setting under a light and being just hammered away at, like, verbal abuse. And then every so often I would get a shock in the neck and shoulder area with something like an electric cattle prod. And then there was another flashback I had. Somebody was doing some massage on me, and they started massaging around my neck, and I just went rigid. Because when their hands were around my neck, it was like suddenly I remembered somebody choking me. Somebody slowly choked me until I lost consciousness. And then they let go, and then I could come back to consciousness, and then sometimes they'd choke me again until I lost consciousness. And this was a traumatization technique and something to try to control me.
So this.
And they also threatened my daughter, who was very young at the time.
Oh my God! I mean, so all this memory are just like piece by pieces. It's not like actually connected. I mean, just like a little bit from here, a little bit from there. But you think the process they did to you is to make you forget or to force you to block this kind of memory? Is that right? Well, I mean, this is terrible. I mean, I'm sure the audience can understand. It's extremely disturbing. I mean, so I want to ask you questions as a human. Even you get trained in the military, like you must feel extremely angry to have such kind of abuse. Mm-hmm. So how do you overcome that?
I was very angry for a while. I'm not so much angry anymore. I'm not angry at the ETs. I don't have bad feelings about the ETs. I have bad feelings about people that would do terrible things to other people. And I guess it's possible that I may have some anger about it for the rest of my life. It was pretty severe trauma, but you have to try to get beyond the anger. Otherwise, anger can make you sick. I know that I've been involved with alternative healing for a long time, and I do body-centered work myself, body-centered coaching and therapeutic techniques. And I know that you cannot carry the energy of anger and fear around in your body for a long period of time without a personal cost to your health. And so I've worked very hard to work through the post-traumatic stress. I've worked very hard to get beyond the anger. But, you know, I still have anger come up sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not easy to talk about it at all. Even I keep telling people, even if a friend who knocked off my teeth a few years ago, and I would still feel the anger and still angry with him, and I still also think about what to do something to revenge or something like that. I mean, that is extremely difficult to overcome this kind of anger and painful. Even now, I'm just listening to you, and I still feel very disturbing. I mean, it's awful. I mean, is there any special way? Is there any unique way you use to overcome this kind of painful?
Well, there's a philosophy called you have to feel it to heal it. And that's basically what I did working with the healer here where I live. She helped me to feel my feelings to completion. So instead of having a difficult feeling come up and then you push it away, you know, maybe have a drink of alcohol or, you know, do something to make the pain or the anger go away. When I was in the therapy process, I was there to feel everything as much as I possibly could so that I could discharge the anger and discharge the fear and discharge the post-traumatic stress. And so I worked for quite a long time to feel my feelings to completion. The other thing that people really need to understand is about forgiveness. Forgiveness is almost even more for the person doing the forgiving than it is for the person that you are trying to forgive. Because when you are able to forgive in yourself, and for me it's an ongoing process,
right.
When you're able to forgive, you release some of the energy of what was done to you. You release and make yourself kind of whole again. And if you hang on to it, then the energy that you hold in your body can become illness. It can become cancer. It can become all kinds of things that manifest in the body as illness. So it's really, really important for people to find a way to move beyond the anger and the fear and to find that forgiveness. Because the forgiveness is really most important for you yourself. It's not really to let the people that did bad things to you off the hook. It's really a process for your own health and well-being. And to just kind of let these other people go. I mean, the bad people, bad stuff is eventually going to catch up with them.
Right.
You know, and you don't have to dirty your hands with revenge.
Yeah, that's what we call karma.
Yeah.
So basically, you're telling people the same kind of experience and try to help them to overcome the pain. Are you working to healing people some kind of work like this now?
I have done a little bit of this kind of work. I plan to do a lot more right now. I'm working very hard on the book. I really, really want to get my book done and out there, so that when I do an interview and people want to know about these experiences, I'll just say, read the book. Because I'm really at a point in my life now where, for my healing, I kind of have to stop repeating this story of trauma.
Right.
I kind of have to be done with it, wash my hands of it and move on. And so the book is a very important part of the process, so that it will all be in the book and people can read about it in the book, and I don't have to tell this terrible story anymore.
Right.
There comes a point in a person's life where they have to move beyond the terrible story.
Yeah. I would like to ask you one more questions about Jim Sparks. Jim Sparks, right? He came to Hong Kong for his lecture early this year, January. Have you actually in touch with Jim Sparks himself, or his story, right?
I know some of his story. I've listened to some of his story. It's a remarkable story. And his experiences definitely touched on mine a little bit. He describes being very angry with the ETs and being paralyzed and even having his vocal cords paralyzed. And when I was a little kid, I was scared, but I was also really angry at the ETs because they were controlling me and doing things to me. And I remember learning very quickly that telepathy went both ways. And I remember laying on the table thinking, if I ever get off this table, I'm going to pick your little frail body up and break you in half and watch your fluids run out. And so my reward for that was not being able to move at all. So I was kind of paralyzed, just like Jim was. And I think I had one phone call with Jim once upon a time. It's probably been over a year now.
Right.
Where we just had, kind of some brief contact. I'd like to have more contact with him and share some more things. But he has a really remarkable story, and I'm really glad that he's out there and that he has his conscious memory intact. Because hypnosis has been brought under a lot of scrutiny in recent years as being unreliable. And that's a whole nother interview. But but I think that hypnosis actually helps us to access parts of ourselves that we cannot get to consciously. And I think it's an important tool, and once upon a time it was even accepted in a court of law as evidence. So it was once very highly regarded and very considered very reliable. And it's just in recent years that it's not considered reliable, and I think the reason for that is because so much information is coming out that is damaging to governments and covert ops.
Right. Because after this talk, and a lot of people not really believe in his story, and they all said he didn't really actually contact with the alien. He basically is a victim of MyLab, and the mind control process make him miss something or become the U.S. government's tongue. What do you think about Jim Sparks' experience? Do you actually believe he actually contact with alien?
Yes, I do.
You do? Because compared to your experience with the alien abduction, it's pretty much like the same kind. Is that right?
Yeah, there are similarities.
Okay, so the alien abduction and military abduction, MyLab, could be happen at the same period of time. It doesn't have to be before, or it doesn't have to be after, or anything like that. So there could be many different kind of MyLab. Is that right?
Yeah, I think there are different varieties of it. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for your sharing the information with us. I know it is very difficult for you, but I appreciate your time, and the audience in Hong Kong and you can actually help telling people the truth of the MyLab and the alien abduction.
Well, thanks, Niara, for coming along. I'm sure.
Thank you for having me.
Much.
And it gets a little easier to talk about every time, but it'll be good to stop telling the story and have it in the book.
You'll finish your book and it'll be there for people to read, and I think this particular interview has gone very well. And I think people will begin to understand how you can have an ET abduction, and at the same time you can have MyLab, and as you MyLab people have said, they back engineer, the military back engineer. They take abductees and back engineer to see what they've learned and what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's an integral part of the process, And this is important that Hong Kong people understand this, because they don't have any way to get this information, Just the brave people like yourself that come up and tell it as it is.
That is true. Yeah. We really appreciate that. So when do you think you will finish the book?
I'm planning on having it finished this summer, and I'm hoping June or July, maybe August.
All right.
I'm working very hard on it every day.
Yeah.
No breaks. I don't even take time off on Saturday and Sunday. Every day I'm working on this book.
Wow, that's really hardworking. When your book's finished, I definitely will buy one.
Okay, thank you.
With your signature on it, of course. Thanks for Niara Isley for doing this interview with us. All right, thank you very much.